I don't know that I'm at liberty to say all this, but I'm telling it anyway. She was traveling too last night, trying to get back here, and she arrived here at about 2:30 this morning, minus luggage. But she is here, ready and able, as this community continues to know, and she's going to talk about aviation sustainment. And so I would ask Renee Mosher, Acting Executive Director of AMCOM Logistics Center, ALC as we know it, and you'll give us a glimpse of aviation sustainment from ALC's perspective.
Thank you. It has been quite the whirlwind to get here. So we do have several people en route, so please forgive us as we kind of work through delayed flights. So I did get in late last night. I tell you, I did not know that that road between Houston and Corpus Christi was so desolate. I mean, I thought, okay, I'll drive about an hour, hour and a half. I'll stop on the side of the road and get a few hours sleep. There's no hotels. Okay, so can we go? Am I clicking? Let me see. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I messed it up. The green button? The big green button? There we go. Okay. All right. I like to walk. Got it?
Now.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to talk a little bit about here today is about aviation sustainment. So like they said, I am the Acting Executive Director of the AMCOM Logistics Center. So, you know, what does that mean? We are nested under Headquarters AMC, commanded by General Perna, the 4-star command. Under the AMCOM Logistics Center, Major General Douglas Gabram. He is desperately trying to get here as we speak. And so I want to talk a little bit about the AMCOM campaign plan. And I don't want to rest on this a lot because I think General Gabram is also going to talk about this a little bit in his brief, but I do want to kind of orient you to the AMCOM campaign plan and how that is nested in the mission of the AMCOM Logistics Center and how that support that we provide to Corpus Christi Army Depot. So under General Perna's campaign plan, he has the strategic readiness, and you can see it the way we have it kind of nested on the far left-hand side of the slide. So you can kind of see as the wheel, we've got the sustainment doctrine, sustainment readiness, sustainable readiness, material readiness, force projection, battlefield sustainment, and material development. So within that wheel, the AMCOM Logistics Center, under AMCOM, we own what we call line of effort number 1, sustainable and material readiness. And so that's what I'm going to focus on my update to you. And what I would like as we kind of go on, if you don't mind, don't hold your questions to the end. Go ahead and ask your questions as I go through. Because the one thing that Colonel Ryan touched upon, the one thing I'm going to talk a lot about is parts. So the one thing I have learned, so I have been at AMCOM for about 15 months now. So in the time that I've been at AMCOM, working under the LCMC in support of aviation readiness, is the criticality of parts to not only CCAD, the depot, and the mission that they have here in the repair of all of the aircraft, but it's also parts in support of secondary item repair lines, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I'm going to go on to the next slide. So under the sustainable material readiness, We have, I'm going to touch on two of the major initiatives, optimize the supply chain and optimize the depot. So what does that mean? What does that mean to you here in the audience? One of the things that I have found in working as closely as I do with CCAD is the professionalism and the dedication of everybody at the depot. And not only that, the dedication and professionalism of the team at AMCOM and the work we do to do the parts support to the warfighter. So one of the metrics that we use to measure ourselves, that General Perna uses us to measure ourselves, and I'll talk, we'll delve down into this a little bit more. You hear a lot about 100% supply availability. Well, what does that mean? That means that we have 100% of the parts available 100% of the time. So, is that affordable? So, in doing this, we have to partner closely with all of our OEM partnerships. Yesterday I was at Mesa with Boeing, and we sat down and we were drilling down for the Apache. There were 5 parts within the Apache that we are critical within the supply chain. So the importance of the partnership that we have within the Army, and in this case Boeing, is critical. The cross-dialogue to get to what General Gabram has tasked us to get after is 100% supply availability. Well, that goes along with 0% back orders. If, theory is if I have 100% supply availability, I have no back orders. What does that mean for Corpus Christi? That means 100% performance to promise. Well, you cannot meet here at Corpus Christi within the programs that you have today, you cannot meet 100% P2P if we don't deliver the parts. So we're kind of seeing the linkage. And then the other, what General Perna says, if I get 100% P2P, then what will follow is your increased revenue and then carryover, which is the 3 core metrics that we are measured against as we go through our business. So performance to promise, okay, thanks. Performance to promise, really, basically it means if I say, let's take the UH-60 recap line, for FY18, I think that we have said we're going to repair 36, is it 36? Aircraft in FY18. So within that given year, we're not necessarily held to a certain number per month, but at the end of the year, we have to reach that golden number of 36. So what we are measured on every month, there are certain tenets that we have to meet to say we're well on our way. Secondary component repair lines were held a little bit more to a stringent goal. If I say that I am going to repair 10 of a spindle, let's say, in the month of November, then I am held to repair 10. If I don't repair the 10, then I take a knock on my P2P. So that's kind of basically, very simply said, what we mean when we are trying to get to 100%. What we're trying to say is if I say I am going to produce X, I produce X. You cannot do that if we don't have the parts. So that's kind of how we're setting ourselves up. We had a great year in FY17, even with the tragic events of Hurricane Harvey. The depot was still able to meet their UH-60 recap goal of 32, and I think that is absolutely a great show of the leadership within CCAD and the fact that under those challenges, they were still able to meet their goal of 100% P2P for the UH-60 recap line. So are there any questions as far as supply availability and what we're trying to do? I'm going to drill down a little bit more into that. I mean, you can ask your question now.
The question I have is parts availability historically has been based upon demand. And demand has been a fluctuating tool. So have you tried to take the sine curve out of this by buying excess stock? Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. And so then because you get the performance you do and take the inefficiency, that cost savings is paying for the excess stock, so it's cost neutral.
So let me kind of, that was just a great segue to my next slide. So the life cycle support. So let's kind of take a step back. So when we say parts availability and aviation sustainment, like you said, sir, it is all based upon your forecast, your demand of your requirement. So it's critical as we go through that process that we are accurately capturing all of those demands, all of those forecasts, in the Army's ERP called Logistics Modernization Program, LMP. If we don't capture those demands in LMP, so what you kind of see in the middle of the chart is the MRP, the requirements planning process. Mandatory MRP stands for Mandatory Requirements Plan. So that is kind of the nucleus of what we base our entire supply chain upon, is the MRP of our forecast. So at the depot, they have their depot level MRP. So as they go in and they do their buys and they build their requirements, they build a requirement, they build a demand. So I see that history. But I also, from where I'm at in the logistics center, I have to take worldwide demands and requirements. And I have to pass those to my suppliers. I have 2 suppliers. And I have another slide. I'll probably get ahead of myself a little bit, but my 2 suppliers are all the OEMs, all of you in the audience, and Corpus Christi Army Depot. They are the supplier for secondary item components for over 400, I believe we have over 400 programs here at CCAD. So they not only repair the aircraft, but they are also their own supplier. And they also supply to the field. So why is that so critically important? If I don't get those demands accurately captured, if we're going outside of the supply chain and we're buying outside of the supply chain, then I don't know that I need 10 of those widgets to repair that spindle in FY18. So then I have a shortage. So that's kind of a very short summary of a lot of the work that we do. So we partner very closely with CCAD. We have a lot of meetings. We have a lot of meetings with all of our OEM partners to make sure we all understand the requirements. So as we go through a given year, we have the parts that we need. Again, I'll refer to what Colonel Ryan said earlier in his update. Wouldn't it be great if you could just go to that supply clerk and have that part when you need it? That's the goal of the ALC for CCAD, that you have every one of those parts when you turn and you need those parts for an aircraft. As you're going through the gates of the art of the probable, which I think you're going to get an update on that, a brief on that later. But as you're going through that gated process, it is my goal, my responsibility to make sure you have those parts when you turn around and you need those parts. So to do that, we do a lot of supply chain planning. We have a lot of meetings in a given year and we talk about what it is we need. Then I'll turn around and I'll sit down with a lot of my partners outside of CCAD. You know, I partner with Boeing, I partner with Sikorsky and Honeywell and all of our great partners. And I'm like, okay, this is what I need. And we'll work our contracts. And that's why it's so critical that we get our contracts in place to support the supply chain. When we have gap in contract coverage, I have a critical shortage in my supply chain. And you'll hear a lot of people talk about lead time. Well, if I don't have something on order and I discover I need it in that given year, then I'm a lead time away. What does that mean? That means I'm not going to meet my P2P that I talked about earlier. So that's kind of what, from an AMCOM logistics perspective, what we kind of oversee. So from an aviation readiness, aviation sustainment standpoint, we have those parts on the shelves. So when you turn around and you need to turn that wrench, they're available. So this is what I talked about, kind of touched upon a little just a few minutes ago. We talked about supply availability. 100% supply availability is the metric we've been given by General Gabram. So that's one of my core metrics. My core metric is 100% supply availability, no back orders. So to do that, kind of, a little bit of what I talked about earlier, I have 2 lines of effort in my supply chain, not lines of effort, but 2 supply feeds. I'll call it supply feeds. And that is my spares and M&O contracts, what many of you in the room are aware of, and CCAD production. CCAD is my production line for B-17 aviation repair parts. Another key partner that we work with every day is DLA. If I do not have that close partnership, that dialogue, that forecast, demand accuracy with DLA, that one little nut or bolt can shut down a production line. DLA is our consumable partner, and they do great work. They're located right here at Corpus Christi at CCAD, and they work with us every day. Don't ever think that the power of, the IPV contract that we just implemented at Corpus Christi, that was a huge win for us because now we don't have, you turn to the bin, your bench stock is right there. That's a great win for CCAD when we got IPV implemented here at Corpus Christi. It's amazing to me how that one little part can shut down an entire production line, and it can shut us down for months. So one of the ways we manage, so I've talked a little bit about the contracts and the criticality and the importance of forecast demand, making sure we accurately have all that captured. We can see ourselves in LMP. CCAD production, the same thing. You are a source of supply. So one of the things that we look at, we call it a line of balance. A line of balance is a tool. So within ALC, I have what I call item managers. A lot of you are probably familiar with an item manager. And they are managing specific nomenclature, specific NSNs to make sure we have the parts we need to meet the requirements. So we do that based upon a line of balance. So in that line of balance, that tells me how many parts I have on the shelf, tells me what my average monthly demand is, it tells me how many back orders I have, it tells me what my get well dates are if I'm critically short. So we use this, and we use this as a tool to manage down to the NSN level of detail. So what is our end state? Increased supply availability. I've talked quite a bit about supply availability. Decreased back orders. Our increased P2P, performance to promise, our decreased carryover, and increased revenue. All of that equals increased readiness for the warfighter. I mean, that's what this is all about. It's all about producing a quality product and getting it out in the field to increase the readiness of the warfighter. That's what we do. So one of the things I want to talk about when I talk about 100% supply availability, the systems that we have today, LMP is designed on a metric at 85%. design it an 85% metric. So you ask, how are we ever going to get to 100% if I buy to an 85% metric? So that's something that we're wrestling with today. There's no more money. We're not going to get an influx of cash from what I call the cash ferry at headquarters AMC or the Department of the Army. We have to deal with what we have. General Perna has briefed many forums that he believes we have enough money to do what we've been tasked to do. So that just means, what does that mean to me? That means I have to get better. I have to get more efficient. I have to get my forecast, my demand has got to be 100%. And that's where I partner closely with CCAD and the team here within the supply chain, Marco and his folks in the supply chain directorate, and to make sure we have our forecast. I partner closely with DLA because I've got to make sure I'm passing those forecasts. Not only does it have to go in, it has to go out, kind of that supply chain wheel. So DLA is dependent upon the information we pass, along with all of our OEM partners. I mean, it's just a building block of how we have to manage this thing we call end-to-end supply chain. So at the end of the day, what is our road ahead? So I don't want to get too far down technical terms, but when I talk about building routes and bombs, there are a lot of folks in the audience that will know what I mean when I talk about building that route. In L&P, if I don't go in and if I don't build the bomb to accurately display every part that I need for every aircraft, then I'm not going to meet any of the objectives and goals that I've talked about previously. That's where it all starts. And that's the work that we do in an AMCOM Logistics Center, and that is kind of a very short, brief description from the bottom, starting at a depot to a logistics center to the field, and the impact that we have on aviation readiness. Are there any questions? I know that's kind of quick and dirty, but I did want to leave time for questions if anybody had questions.
Here we go.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Rick Stevenson, Director of Accessory Rotor Blades, one of your customers.
Hey, Rick.
Good morning, ma'am. And with all due respect, I understand P2P, but when my P2P goal is unsustainable and unsupportable, what's the answer next?
So that's a good question. And that's a question we get asked a lot at AMCOM. So the way I've heard General Gabram explain that is it's a stretch goal, and we know that. Does anybody truly think that we're going to get to 100%? So I'm going to kind of circle back, so bear with me for a minute. For you to get to P2P, the 100%, I have got to give you the parts. And that is the role of an ALC, a logistics center. Whether it's AMCOM, TACOM, CCOM, that is the role of a logistics center. So we got to understand it is a stretch goal to get to 100% P2P and 100% supply availability. Do I think that we can get to 100% P2P? I do. But I know that we've got a lot of work to get there. We've got to get what I talked about earlier. We've got to get our routes, our bombs. We've got to build that foundation. We've got to get our demand planning. We've got to build our forecast. If we get that foundation, that layer that everything sits on accurate, I think that we can get to the 100% P2P. And I do not believe that we have to get 100% supply availability to get to your 100% P2P. But I've got to have the parts you need when you need them. Does that answer your question?
Unfortunately, no, ma'am, it does not.
Well, I did try. Okay.
So if the understanding is that the P2P is a stretch goal, but that metric is being graded by that metric as of today, is there a timeline when you anticipate that the 100% supportability, 100% parts is going to make it to the depot?
Well, I'll take that back to you. When is the depot going to get all of your routes and bombs and all of your forecasts accurate?
I'll turn that question over to Colonel Lancetta.
Oh, boy, here we go. Here we go. Hang on, Ellen. I got it. That's hot.
So right now, according to ALC, we're at 97% forecast accuracy for UH-60 recap. We still have some work to do for the components line, but again, so correct me if I'm wrong, 97% accuracy forecasting on UH-60 recap. So the bombs and routes she's talking about is, anyone familiar, who's not familiar with bombs and routes? Come on, you all know what bombs and routes are? So Colonel Ryan admits it. So a bomb is a bill of material, right? So a route is how something is built. So if you think about making a cake, the ingredients to that cake is what a bomb would be. How to make that cake, put it in the oven, 350, whatever it is, I'm surprised I know that, is the route. So it tells you what material you need to build a helicopter and what process from start A to Z you do to build that helicopter. That's a bomb and a route. What's included in that is what we need is tech data. So when we had to complete 8,276 CAP plans. So CAP plans are bombs, routes, tech data, WIP, and some other things that we needed to do. We completed that already by 30 September, period. And we should have done that years ago, but we didn't do it. For whatever reason, it doesn't matter. We did it by 30 September, which was our deadline for the CG. Done and over with. So when Renee says get those bombs and routes done, I would argue that we have done those bombs and routes. We're complete and we're 97% accuracy. Now, on the UH-60 recap line, on the component line, we're about 67%. Where's Drew Jackson? What do you think, Drew? Where are we at right now? All right, she's not answering. So we're about 67. We need some more. But when you're talking about 13,000 of these components that we build every single year for the UH-60s, the Apaches, the 47s, Navy, Air Force, that's a lot of stuff to do, right? So we've got some work to be done on that. But as far as our forecasting accuracy goes, for the UH-60 recap line, we're close to 100%. We've got to do more on the components line. I think my directors would agree with me, right?
So let me jump in there with what Colonel Lancetta just said. We have made great strides in FY17. Marco Garcia and the supercell concept that has been implemented here at this depot, we have made outstanding progress. And I say outstanding. But remember what I said earlier, you're a lead time away in a lot of cases. So because we're at 97% accuracy of those routes and bombs that Colonel Lancetta kind of laid out for us, doesn't mean I'm going to have the parts tomorrow. It just doesn't. And that is what we have to continue to hammer home and make sure we provide our updates. But that's why the relationship that we have with not only, as I talked about, CCAT as a secondary item repair line for reparables here at CCAT, our partnership with DLA, but our partnership with our OEMs. That is why it is critical that that kind of three-pronged approach is we're all in sync and we're talking. It goes back to foundation, forecast, demand accuracy. So because we're getting better, that's great, but we can't let our foot up off the accelerator. We have to continue to keep the momentum that we've built, the partnerships that we've built, and just keep pushing, because just because we've gotten that 97% accuracy doesn't mean those parts are going to materialize tomorrow.
Let me answer that too. So real quick, let me just kind of dovetail it. I'm sorry, Renee.
That's fine.
So she's right. But when she talks about LMP, the Logistics Modernization Program, in the past, we weren't using that properly. That's just my opinion, and many folks can disagree with me. But we know, I call it the 80-20 rule. We've been building helicopters for 56 years now. So I know 80% of those parts, UH-60-wise, I know what they probably are, common parts that we have to build helicopters, right? And for those of you who don't know, we build helicopters to 0 time, gold standard. Some people confuse that with TBOs, overhauls. It's not. It's a 0 time aircraft. That aircraft will have 0 time on the transmission, engine, rotor blades, etc. The only thing that would be arguable is the skin. And if we're redoing the skin, 379 beams, 308 beams for UH-60s, I would argue that also has 0 time. Now, to be able to do that on time for the goal that we have of getting it out to the warfighter back out to 275 days, I've got to be able to forecast out, and I'm telling Marco Garcia and my folks, you got to forecast out 120 days before we even think about inducting that aircraft. That has not been done in the past. I'll go over that when I talk about all the probable, but that's what we're doing now today, starting last year, 3 October. We have not done that. We've kind of been doing what we can, excuse my language, but I'm old scout, MSH, make shit happen. So we've been doing that the last several years to get stuff out. In the past, we had helicopters that were in our clamshells that we could do some responsible controlled exchange. I would argue those days are gone. So we have to do what Renee is saying, that 120 days left of induction, we've got to make sure our accuracy is right on the money, 97% right now.
That's right.
To get it before I even induct it. So that way, if I do that 120 days out, if you add up the times and whip for my gated system, and I'll talk more about it tomorrow, but that gives us about 243 days to get that material flow into gate 4, my bottleneck gate. That allows my guys to do a lot of planning. Those are the things that we have really adjusted, synchronized, and coordinated with ALC and with Harry Nahadas, Mike Boone, all those folks to get me those parts in time, because I owe that to the warfighter, period. Done. But again, we got to do a lot of fixing internally that we have done the past year so far, and these folks have really done a great job of that. But I would acknowledge that we got to do more. We do. But again, it's like turning a battleship. It's one incremental move at a time. So that's what I would say.
That's thanks, Colonel Ansetta. And that's the message that we have to keep hammering home to our senior leaders. We have to be able to show and articulate the work that's been done, and that's part of what we try to do in support of the team here at CCAD. I have never seen such a close partnership between a depot, other than Letterkenny, than what we have with the team here at Corpus Christi, at CCAD, and what we have at AMCOM. There are so many people that are dedicated out there every day doing nothing but trying to figure out that part. Okay, I don't have that part. Well, this aircraft cannot move from gate 4 to gate 7 or I get my gates mixed up. But there's a whole dedicated team that does nothing within the entire wheel, to include our OEMs, DLA, item managers up at Huntsville, to go find that part. And we'll pull that part if we have to off of a production line, off of a new aircraft, to keep the production line going here. And that's our partnership with I've been negligent. I haven't even talked about our partnership with the PEOs and the PMs. It takes all of us to make this work. We're never going to get, I do believe we will 100% get to 100% P2P, but to get there, I have got to get my supply availability, and that's the linkage. I've got to get my supply availability higher. Today, we closed the year out. I want to say we closed the year out for aviation supply availability at 87%. So we got to get better. And to do that, it's going to take everybody in the community to help us get there. And honestly, I think we're going to get there one part at a time. Yes, sir.
Ed Nas with BAE Systems, and I'm a spares program manager for aircraft seats.
I'm
And
sorry, sir, can you speak up a little bit?
Working here? I'm Ed Nas. I'm with BAE Systems. I'm a program manager for spares, mainly for seats in the aircraft. And I have a question about the forecast, how it gets flowed down to us. I mean, I don't think I've really ever seen a forecast from DLA or from the government. It's typically, I'll just get requests for quotes and orders. Is any of that stuff kind of communicated out to us, or is there a system to do that?
So did you say you were from BAE?
Yes.
Okay. So the way we share those, I mean, the data's in LMP. We allow a lot of the OEM partners to have read access to LMP. And you also have the visibility in the IRR reviews and the PMRs that we conduct on pretty much a monthly basis. All of that data is shared when we're doing program management reviews with the item managers, with the team here at CCAD. So, I mean, these are ongoing. So our requirements are articulated. Our requirement to you is articulated through the form of a contract vehicle. That's why you saw the spares contract. So that's how I articulate to you my requirement. So if I tell you that I need 120 and I need you to deliver those 120, 20 per month, I need you to deliver those. If you become, not you personally, but if anybody becomes delinquent upon the ordering, it impacts the entire supply chain. So I ask, when you receive those contract solicitations, those purchase requests, please turn those. I mean, we're having extreme long lead times and ALT times on contract purchase requirement proposals. We need those turned quickly so we can get the parts flowing in the supply chain. If I have a contract and you're delinquent in your deliveries, the impact that you have is felt not only at CCAD, but it's also felt in the field. I can't repair aircraft. I can't train. Fort Rucker, we're short Apaches at Fort Rucker because I don't have enough parts to keep them. I don't have enough parts to keep all of the Apaches at Fort Rucker flying. I don't have enough parts to do a lot of things that we need to do. So it's critical. We are articulating our requirements through contract vehicles. We need to get those. I have at ALC today, I have over 7, I think we're down, I want to say it's about 750 open PRs. What does that mean? I don't have a contract. So that's my supply chain. If I don't have a contract, I don't have parts flowing. If I don't have parts flowing, Colonel Ansetta and the team here at CCAD can't turn wrenches. That's the criticality and that's the partnership we have with our OEMs. If I come to you and I say I have a requirement of 100 and I need them in this timeline, I need you to turn those proposals around, get them awarded so we can get parts flowing. That's how I articulate my requirement. Any other questions? I think I'm getting the boot.
Well, we don't want to boot anybody. That's not the intent. The intent is that, one, thank you very, very much, Renee, for a very informative presentation.